I get through nursing school. I kind of start severing my relationship with the midwifery group a little bit during nursing school. Because nursing school, you have no social life. Like, you have no time for anything but school. I would not have been able to get through school without the help of my husband and my mother and my grandmother and my kids. Like, my oldest, Amber, at the time was a teenager and 15, 16. She helped take care of the little one. Like, she would get out of school early to go pick up her sister from preschool. My mom would take the little one to and from preschool. Like, I had such a strong support system to get through nursing school. But during that time, I just started sort of separating myself from the midwifery community. But I also continued to work at a birth center during my off time. And I remember the midwife there, that's a whole nother story. She asked me, she goes, when you finish nursing school, can we hire you? And I knew she wasn't going to pay me a decent wage because they don't make a lot of money. They really don't. They charge outrageous, but they don't. I was like, no. The only reason she wanted me is because she knew she wanted an RN on staff. And that birth center actually ended up going way under, and she was sued by the state and lost her license. So I think the original reason she lost her license is for undiagnosed preeclampsia, but I'm not 100% sure. But she also had some insurance fraud going on. So yeah. Anyway, so that's another interesting story too, that we can talk about some of my birth experiences as a midwifery student at the birth center. But back to Alexa's story. So I finished nursing school and always thinking I'd end up in labor delivery, something, and I couldn't get a job. I don't know what it was. I really, really struggled trying to find work. I would go in for interviews for L&D units, but they would see all this midwifery work on my resume and they're like, are you sure this is what you want to do? You really don't fall into like the normal medical birth kind of thing. And I would try and tell them, yeah, I'm trying to expand. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to grow, whatever. Couldn't get hired. So I finally got in at Loma Linda Children's Hospital through their computer programming, not even as a bedside nurse. They were updating all of their electrical charting system and they needed people to teach. And I'm a pretty good teacher. So I got in with that. And during that time, I met the director of the NICU director. And she met me and I was a new grad and everything. And she's like, I want you to come to the NICU. And I was like, I want to come to the NICU. I was just looking for any kind of job. I really didn't, so I ended up going into the NICU in 2013 and that is my home. I absolutely love what I do. And I've continued to learn and I've continued to grow. And I see these babies coming in that are post-dates, HIE, shoulder dystocias, all of these things. And you learn that being post-dates is just really, really risky. And of course I knew at that time about placentas failing and all of that. And I just continue to grow and learn. And then one night I happened to get on Facebook and I hear about a baby that's died in Las Vegas. And I was like, holy shit. And he's overdue. And I'm like, oh my God, it's happened again. So I get on there and I'm looking, and there's a midwife that we know. Her name is Barbara Herrera. She was my support through all of this. She was always a really good sounding board for me because she was a licensed midwife who was really into the woo, but she also knew that there was a problem in midwifery. And I'm hoping Barbara will see this. I will send it to her. She was like, I love what I do. And we are helping women, but there's something wrong here. There's not enough training in here. There's not enough education. People are being hurt. And she would always listen to me. And I remember when I finally told her, you know what? I think so-and-so allowed Alexa to die. And again, it was that I've been waiting for you to say that. I'm giving you the space to say that, to have that realization. So I get on with her and I was like, who's the midwife? Who's the midwife? That baby in Vegas. And we find out it was your midwife. And that's how Christy and I met. And it turns out that your midwife and me were being trained under the midwife that allowed my daughter to die. So the midwife that trained her didn't teach her or didn't learn that post-dates are a problem. And I know she didn't. I can't get into that, but I work at a local hospital. Babies come in from being post-dates. So that's how I actually met Danielle, was through that. Again, I love the NICU. I love what I do. I love helping these, I guess it's that whole birth junkie, but in a completely different way. Like, I just love helping moms and babies and helping them through their trauma, even the super sick ones and all of that.
I did have a couple questions just because I know things took a little bit for you to figure out what happened. So one of my questions is, and I know things are a little bit different, but I am going to assume, just for video's sake, I guess, you didn't ever go after or report your midwife for what she had done. So my question is, did you ever confront her, ever have any type of interaction that would be like you saying like, or maybe even asking what happened or saying like you figured this out later on or anything like that, kind of like closure with your midwife?
Yeah, great question. And the short answer is no. Because our relationship went so much more deeper than client and midwife, right? She was my mentor. She was my friend. She was all these things. And I felt like, and I still feel like, and I'll tell you why in just a minute, that she would just gaslight me the whole way. And I say that because she had reached out to me a few years ago. She texted me, she wrote me a letter on Facebook saying, I heard that you're bitter with me now, right? I hadn't talked to her in years, right? But somehow my feedback had gotten back to her about how you need to be careful about having home birth. Home birth is, because I shout that out now to everybody. And she had heard that I was bitter about it. So for me, it was just never worth the energy to see her or face her. It's just too painful because I had so much respect for her as my mentor, as my friend. And it would have been wasted energy. It's not going to change anything that she's doing. I will say that I know that she's retired. I've had people share some stuff with me about her. Some of the nurses at work would still follow her because she did attack our hospital at one point recently before her retirement, and the nurses were all in on that and saw her Facebook page. And so when she retired, this one was like, you need to see this. And in her little retirement letter, she actually lists out Alexa as someone that I don't want to use the word transform, but as someone she thanked for her in her midwifery career. She listed my daughter. So I don't know what that means exactly. And I don't know if I care to know what that means exactly. I know that she did say for that news article that was written out of Florida, what was that reporter that you guys were interviewed for? She had told them that she'd never had a baby die. The reporter reached out to me and I was like, whoa, what? Like, she totally denied Alexa. And what I think she was doing is she never had a baby die at home. No, I never had that conversation with her. She does know somehow that my feelings have changed over time. She did acknowledge Alexa as being something in her career that was maybe pivotal to her. I don't know exactly what that means. I don't really care what that means because I know she continued to practice, and I can't violate any things, but I've seen babies come through, and for people that she's trained to, without giving away information. So I don't think it changed her practice at all. But I don't know. It just, it took me years to get here. Like, Alexa's turning 16. It's taken me a long time to face this reality. And it's going to upset some of my friends, you know, they still think she's the bee's knees, like, you know, and maybe she is for people who don't have issues. Like, my big thing is, if you're such a great provider, why didn't you put things together clinically? I had never gone into labor on my own. I'd had lactation failure twice. There is something hormonally that isn't right in my body to have kids. I can grow them. I can grow great kids. I can get pregnant. I can't get them out and feed them. Never have been able to do that, you know, hormonally. And I have physically changed my body quite a bit in the last 2 years. And I went and visited my sister last week. She's like, oh my God, you have no boobs. I'm like, sister, I never had boobs. That's why I never made milk. You know, like I never, you know, that's one thing my friend Michelle and I are just still stumped on. Why wasn't that connected? You know, you're the provider. You should have made those connections. Something isn't right, you know, but instead she just ignored it and allowed my daughter to die. And I think that what she would say to that, well, that was your choice. This is what you wanted. They just gaslight you that this is your informed consent. You know, this is what you want to do. You want this home birth, you know, instead of taking any accountability, they are just, you know, pushing an agenda, you know, that harm children, you know, back to the VBAC group, you know, like you can't keep just pushing, was it ICANN's agenda? Like, not every woman is physically capable of having a vaginal birth, you know, and thank God we have the medicine and the facilities that allow safe cesareans, you know, because women did die. Like, if I was born 100 years ago and had these issues, I'd be dead. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have 3 living children. My husband would have a dead wife and a dead child.
What you said about how she said with the story when they interviewed her, she said she never lost any babies, but exactly what you said. Your baby was delivered at a hospital. You went to the hospital and had her. So she's like washed her hands clean of the whole situation, when that's not how it is. You were the provider. You were the responsible party. You were accountable for what happened. Whether you went in for medical care, even if you had gone in before and went and got induced, that's all stuff of like provider stuff. So yeah, exactly what you just said is exactly what so many midwives do. Oh, I've never had any baby deaths. And I'm sure mine would have went off and said she had no baby deaths either. But because I went to a hospital and I had a C-section and all this stuff happened. But the reality is, like, I didn't stop talking about it, so she couldn't run away from it, you know, but I'm sure she would have done that. She would have went to Florida. She would have went whatever state and been like, yeah, I've never lost a baby. And I'm sure that's what they do all the time. And I think that is a big issue. And exactly what you just said about, you had health things with children, previous children before having her. And it was like, oh, it's fine. It's natural. Okay. But exactly like you said, it was natural for us to die, but now we have advances. We are medically, we are science. So that's a whole nother issue that I can't stand. Like, the stuff's right there, like a VBAC, for example. If you've had a C-section in a hospital, you should not be having a baby at home. Clearly you had medical, like a surgery to have a baby. Going to at home, what are they going to do? They can't give you another C-section. They can't do anything. So if there's a medical reason of something that happened, it could be so many different reasons that happened of different things. Maybe you did have to get induced. Maybe there was all these things. A midwife can't touch you, because if it's not natural, then what are they going to do? They can't do anything. So right. I think that's a huge thing of when they go off to look at your history, because they do. They look at your history. When you go and you're interviewing midwives, they want to know, how many babies have you had? What's your medical history? Have you had diabetes in the past? They actually do ask you these questions. You actually and tell them all the stuff of your history. Some places you fill out kind of like a form, or things are all verbal, just depends on the midwife, but you are giving them a history. If a midwife knows that you have a history of something that requires medical attention, why are they taking you on anyways? They should know, you're no longer low risk because you had something happen and it could happen again. And I don't want to endanger your life and I don't want to endanger the life of your child. Therefore, I advise you as a midwife to go to have a doctor, go to have a hospital birth. You can still have a pleasant birth. Maybe I can be there as a doula, but at the same time, this is what I advise. And that would make a huge difference of all over of what's going on. Huge difference.
Well, and going through that training also, I also know that she was legally supposed to transfer my care out at 40 weeks. That's what the state of California law requires, that licensed midwives, once you get into a post-dates pregnancy, that's considered high risk and they need to be transferred out. What she does is she says, okay, you're post-dates, you are aware of the risks, this is your choice still, right? So that they take away that's their informed consent, right? That takes away their liability because this is what you need to do. The risks, right? She never told me that baby was going to die. Like, she didn't say, Christina, you are way overdue. She didn't say that, right? I think a good provider would have talked to me and went, okay, you have never gone into labor on your own. Both your babies were induced at 42 weeks. Maybe we need to transfer your care out to an OB so that you can be more closely monitored. That never happened, and that should have happened. And that's why I say she allowed her to die. I never said that she killed her, but she allowed her to die because she went outside of her scope of practice against what licensed midwives are allowed to do within the state of California.
Now, you were talking about an OB would more closely monitor you. Did she offer any monitoring, or did she assure you that she was monitoring you in the post-dates period?
The latter. So she did her in-office NSTs with a handheld Doppler. There was no biophysical profile. She's just looking for the little bit of variability with her hand. Then it felt real and felt legit. Now that I'm a NICU nurse and know what I know, it's not legit.
No.
But I didn't know that then,
Okay, there's a couple narratives that I've been acquiring, I guess, over a period of time. One of them is, if you ask an OB about a situation, if I find myself in this situation, what happens? What a midwife will do is they will say, oh, honey, everything will be okay. I can take care of this. And they basically, it's words. They reassure. Now, if you ask an OB, I'm going post-dates. If I get to 41 weeks and nothing happens, what are we going to do? And they will say, okay, we have a plan, and they will tick off the boxes, this, that, the other thing. So with a midwife, you get words. With an OB, you get action.
Right. And that's so true. So, this didn't just affect me and my husband, it affected my children as well, Amber and Austin. They're quite a bit older, when I had Alexa. And Amber is now going to be 27. She had her first baby 2 years ago. And I have to tell you that pregnancy was very traumatic for her. She had a lot of PTSD. She woke up every day thinking her baby was going to die. And it was her first pregnancy. Talk about mom guilt. Like, I created this trauma for my daughter thinking that just because she's pregnant, the baby's going to die. But she developed a very good relationship with her provider at the very beginning and said, I lost my sister. She was stillborn post-dates. Like, I can't go way overdue like my mom did. I can't. And so they came up with the plan at 41 weeks that she would be induced. They were not going to let her go post-date. So I got there when she was just shy of 40 weeks. I was there a week and went to her appointment with her. And of course, my daughter was really anxious. She said she felt a little bit of sense of peace once I got there. I got out to North Carolina. I got there and we got to her 41-week appointment, and she went to her appointment and the doctor's like, okay, everything looks good, you can go home. And my daughter was like, but remember that conversation? She's like, oh yeah, hold on a second. Doctor's gone 10 minutes. We're like, what's going on? She goes, okay, go straight to L&D. We're like, she goes, you're being induced today. She goes, you reminded me. She goes, they have a bed for you, go on up. And we started her induction, and her doctor actually was doing surgery the next morning and was able to come and deliver the baby for her. So there is a plan. There is a plan. Post dates is a valid reason for induction to keep these babies safe. And I see it in the NICU. I would rather much have a 38 weeker being born than a 42 weeker. When we see that we see a 42 weeker on the board, we get nervous. Very nervous for those resuscitations.
So I actually had a question, and I'm really glad that you're talking about all this side. My question is, afterwards, you did have 2 children. You did have yourself, your husband. Did any of you get any healing, any therapy, any treatment, any kind of care afterwards? And did it take a while for you guys to even get there? Because I know shock afterwards takes some time just to get through shock, to even admit that you might even need help or that kind of thing. Because you talked about your daughter, which I love that you shared about your daughter having a baby and how scary it was for her, because there's a level of PTSD that we carry that we don't even know that we have. So I'm wondering about what kind of thing did you and your family do for care and therapy for you guys after Alexa?
So in the immediate period, I had my friend Michelle, who was a child life specialist, who has a lot of training in grief and healing. And I remember I was probably about 6-8 weeks after Alexa died. She's like, let's go out to dinner and to a movie. And I was like, okay, whatever, let's go. And I don't even remember we saw Bewitched. That was a horrible movie. But we sat in her van afterwards in the parking lot and had a long conversation. And she's like, this is going to take time, Christina. This is going to be really, really hard. She goes, you have a definitive line in your history now. You have life before Alexa and you have life after. And nothing's ever going to change that. She's always going to be a part of you, but you have to feel this, and it's going to be painful and hard, and you have a lot of work to do. And I remember psychologically me telling myself, you have a year. I don't know why I gave myself that timeline. You have a year to feel like shit and not do shit. Sorry if I'm cussing, but that's what it is. And after that, if then you don't feel like you can pick yourself up, then you need to get more help. So I did a lot of work that first year. I had my Mothers of Angels mommies through the mothering group, those ladies that I'm meeting up with this summer. We did a lot of healing and processing together. My son, so this is interesting you bring that up. So when I got pregnant with Abigail 2 years later, he started acting out really bad. And I didn't know what was going on. Like, he was just angry and mad. And he finally broke down. He's like, I'm afraid the baby's going to die. Every night he was like afraid the baby was going to die. So I did put him in counseling towards the end of my pregnancy with Abby, to help him process. And then I actually started seeing that counselor too, because I was having a hard time too. So we saw them for short periods of time. Amber, unfortunately, I wasn't aware of her trauma at the time. That has all come up as she's gotten older, and Amber has had therapy and counseling because of all that trauma. She says she doesn't remember a lot of her middle school, early high school years, which is ironic because I don't either, because I'm going through that now with Abigail. And Abigail's challenging me, and I'm like, I don't remember this with Amber. Like, why don't I was she just the perfect kid? No, I just have blocked it all out. She will say she was the perfect kid, but I think I've just blocked out all that trauma. So yeah, I mean, we just, and I'm actually reading Oprah's book right now, What Happened to You, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And it's connecting a lot of the dots in this trauma that took place in my family, and how your body holds on to the memories. And in fact, last night when I was preparing for this interview, I was thinking about the night before she died. Actually, my due date was this week, so that brought in some triggers too, and the physical feelings, the time of year. We're still in the same city and town that we lived in with her, so the same weather, same smell, same, it's just, so yeah, your body holds on to the trauma. And I remember I woke up this morning achy, and I think it's because I knew I was doing this interview. Like, I knew I was going to be hitting some painful memories today, and working through them, and doing all of that and processing it. So yeah, we had some therapy. I do think it made my relationship with my husband stronger. Like, instead of tearing us apart, which is pretty rare, which is pretty common actually, us actually staying together is a statistic in and of itself. We'll be married 30 years this year. It did make my family closer. It made me closer to my big kids. They're still very, very close to me. You know, Alexa gave me a lot of gifts. You know, if she had lived, I don't know that my life would be where I'm at right now. I don't know that I'd be a NICU nurse in a level 4 NICU. I don't know that my relationship would be as strong with my big kids as they are now. Like, she gave me a lot of gifts. And for that, I am very, very grateful. Meeting you and talking about this and meeting my mothers of angels mamas that are my sisters, you know, she gave me a lot. In her death, she gave me so much. Now, granted, I don't know what her life would have given me if she got to have a life, but I can't think about that. I need to be grateful for where I am right now.